right? For every ton of CO2 we are emitting today, we cause at least about $40 worth of damages. When I bought a cross-country flight to San Francisco and back, I emit about 1 ton of CO2. I personally, not the plane, just me personally. Meanwhile, I don't pay for that.
So you want the airline to charge an extra $40 on your ticket?
I want the government to put a price on CO2 that everybody pays in order to set the right incentives.
But there isn't broad public support for taxing emissions. Meanwhile, a cheap but controversial solution of last resort has emerged. A so-called geoengineering technique called solar radiation management, shooting particles into the sky to reflect sunlight back into space.
You've seen that
Harvard
before.
environmental scientist David Keith.
The central idea is to make the planet a little bit more reflective, which tends to cool it down because it will absorb less sunlight. And that will partially and imperfectly compensate for the buildup of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, which are tending to trap heat and make the Earth warmer.
Nature ran the experiment in 1991, when the eruption of Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines lofted a 20 million ton sulfur dioxide cloud into the stratosphere, lowering global temperatures by a full degree Fahrenheit for 2 years. And mimicking the volcano's effect by spraying sulfates is relatively cheap, says Wagner.
It's somewhere between $1 and $10 billion to
Cheap
literally fly like Learjets 24/7, enough of them to decrease global average temperatures back to where we
David
were.
Keith said less than 1 GDP to make an ice
But
age.
if the clear and future danger of climate change
Seen that
is some
before.
chance of calamity, what could sulfur particles in the stratosphere do? The premise of the sci-fi film Snowpiercer, starring a train that circles the globe with the last living humans, is a dramatization of skeptics' worst fears. A coolant
Extremely
shot into
cheap,
the upper
they say,
atmosphere that freezes Earth.
to actually do an ice age. Watch one of my other videos on it.
Weitzman
David
and
Keith
Wagner
says it
have
at
their
the TED
own
Talks.
scare scenario. A rich, rogue geoengineer.
Man has climbed Mount Everest, gone to the bottom of
The
the
rogue
ocean.
geoengineer. They say only a country could do it.
In every field of
Maybe
human
like
endeavor,
Richard Branson, though.
except crime.
As James Bond's arch
Yeah, Richard
nemesis
Branson could do it.
Goldfinger
He's got the
easily dispersed
airlines,
gas over Fort Knox,
money.
Weitzman and Wagner imagine a green finger, sending 100 planes around the Earth around the clock.
I think it's very implausible that it would be done at large scale by a single person, a Goldfinger.
But, says Keith, countries could certainly do it. And if temperatures keep rising, some might ask, why not? Risks be damned.
The big risks of this technology fundamentally aren't technical. They're political. They're the risks of how it gets used in a divided world. They're the basic question of how we set the thermostat in a world where we have many different countries and many different interests, and it's really cheap to adjust the thermostat.
Extremely cheap
With
to
emissions
adjust the
rising,
thermostat.
Keith and
Wow.
his colleagues are researching technical dangers, depleting the ozone layer and changes in weather patterns among them. They think geoengineering could become a desperation fallback. Consider the latest call for action from Pope Francis.
Questa nostra casa.
This home of ours is being ruined, and that damages everyone, especially the poor.
Put the lotion in the basket.
In his recent encyclical, the Pope made the moral case for reducing the use of fossil fuels and for rethinking current definitions of economic growth. Scientist Keith agrees.
Even if I knew that stopping climate change would make the world on average a few percent poorer in 2100, I'd still be in favor of stopping climate change. And that's because I want to leave future generations with a chance to enjoy the natural world more as I do. And that is fundamentally an ethical or moral or naturalistic view about the world that isn't easily captured in the equations of economists.
Yeah.